The stars stretched across the black sky like silver dust. A great ship from Earth drifted among them, carrying men and women with one goal. They were not soldiers. They were not hunters. They were people of peace, chosen to speak with the rulers of another world. Among them was a young man named Aaron. He was not the strongest or the most skilled, but he carried something inside that no one else seemed to notice. It was patience and the quiet wish to understand others, even when the world seemed full of walls. The mission had begun after long years of silence between humans and the people of the world called Celera. Reports said the Celerans were proud, bound by old ways, and difficult to reach with words. They spoke with songs and tones that human machines could not always copy. Still, the leaders of Earth believed there could be trust, and so the ship sailed through the endless dark to meet them. Aaron spent the journey reading about the Celerans. They were tall, with bright skin that shimmered in light. Their eyes were like crystal, deep and shining with hidden meaning. Their voices could rise like a river in storm or fall as soft as wind in a field. Many on the ship thought of them as cold because they rarely showed emotion. Aaron was not sure. He wondered if they simply spoke in a way humans had not yet learned. At last, the ship reached Celera. The human envoys were welcomed with careful formality. A grand hall had been built of stone and silver, glowing softly with streams of light that ran through the walls. The council of Celera gathered there, robed in shining garments. Among them sat the princess, Lyra, daughter of the great ruler. She did not wear heavy crowns or armor, yet she seemed more distant than any of them. Her gaze was fixed forward, her hands folded, her lips still. The human leaders bowed and offered words through the translator device. Promises of respect. Hopes of trade. Wishes for peace. The words were clear but empty in the air. The Celerans listened without moving, their faces calm like carved statues. Aaron stood among the humans, his heart beating faster with every moment of silence. He looked toward the princess. Something about her eyes struck him. They did not seem cold. They seemed heavy, as if carrying weight too great for her alone. The meeting went on with little progress. The translator repeated phrases again and again. The Celerans answered in tones that sounded more like music than speech. Aaron could see the gap widening, though none spoke of it. Words carried meaning, but not feeling. And without feeling, trust could never be born. That night, as the humans rested in their quarters, Aaron could not sleep. He thought of the princess and the silence that wrapped around her. He thought of the way her people's language flowed with rhythm and rise. Then he remembered something from his own past. When he was a child, his grandmother often sang to him by firelight. The songs were old, carrying stories that no book had written. They did not need many words, only a melody that entered the heart. A thought came to him. Perhaps the Celerans did not respond to words because they spoke with feelings shaped in sound. Perhaps a song could reach where translation failed. It seemed foolish, yet it also seemed true. Aaron opened the data tablet given to all envoys. Within it were records of Celeran culture. He searched until he found fragments of their songs. He listened closely, again and again. The tones were strange, rising and falling in ways no human song did. But Aaron tried to match them with his own voice, soft and careful, so that none around him would wake. He practiced for hours. His voice was not perfect, but it carried intent. He was not trying to copy their art. He was trying to show that a human heart could step into their world. By morning, his throat ached, but his spirit felt lighter. He had found a bridge, though small and fragile. The next day, the council gathered again. The humans repeated their offers. The Celerans gave measured replies. Once more, silence hung heavy. Aaron's pulse quickened. He looked at the princess, still silent, still distant, yet her eyes seemed restless, as if she too longed for something more. Before fear could stop him, Aaron stepped forward. His leaders turned in surprise. The Celerans looked at him with sharp eyes. He bowed low, then lifted his head and began to sing. The sound was shaky at first, but it grew steady. The melody was drawn from the fragments he had studied. It rose and fell in the Celeran way, carrying tones that touched the air like light through water. The hall grew quiet. Every ear turned toward him. He sang not as one trying to impress but as one reaching with open hands. The princess's eyes widened. Her lips parted slightly. For the first time, her face changed. She did not look at the other humans. She looked at Aaron. There was no translator between them now, only voice and breath. The song filled the hall, soft yet strong, fragile yet unbroken. When he stopped, the silence was deeper than before. No one moved. Then the princess slowly lowered her gaze, and in her eyes was something none had seen from her before. It was not anger. It was not pride. It was a spark of memory and sorrow hidden beneath years of stone. Aaron stood still, his heart racing, unsure of what he had done. But deep within, he felt that the wall between them had cracked. He did not know what would come next, but he knew the first step had been taken. The council ended without decision that day. Yet something had changed. The princess left the hall in silence, but her last glance at Aaron carried a weight greater than all the words spoken in those 2 days. And so, the story of a song, born from one human heart, began to shape the fate of 2 worlds. The night after the first song was heavy with silence. The human envoys sat together in their quarters, speaking in hushed voices. Some whispered that Aaron had been foolish to sing before the council without permission. Others wondered if his act had done more than all the speeches of the leaders. None of them truly knew what effect it had left on the Celerans. Aaron sat apart from the others. He felt no regret, though fear still stirred inside him. He remembered the way Princess Lyra's eyes had widened, the way she had looked at him when the hall grew quiet. That look was burned into his mind. It was not the cold stare she gave to everyone else. It was the look of someone who had been touched by memory, as if his song had brushed against something deep within her heart. He closed his eyes and thought of his grandmother's voice. She used to hum old songs when he could not sleep, when storms raged outside their small home on earth. The words had been simple, but the melodies carried warmth that no storm could erase. Those songs had never belonged to books or councils. They had belonged to people. To families. To the human need for connection. Aaron wondered if the Celerans had once shared the same. The fragments he had studied the night before were full of beauty, but they felt incomplete. He had seen the look in the princess's eyes. She had known the song he had tried to shape. Perhaps it had been sung to her long ago. Perhaps his voice had awakened something she thought was lost. The next morning, the humans returned to the great hall. Aaron walked behind the leaders, quiet but alert. The Celeran council sat as still as before, their crystal eyes fixed on the visitors. Yet there was a faint shift in the air. Whispers moved among them like hidden winds. The princess sat in her place, her face calm once more, but Aaron noticed the faint redness around her eyes. She had cried. The council began again. Words passed through translators. Promises of fair trade, respect, and unity were spoken with practiced tones. The Celerans replied with their own phrases, each one carrying weight yet sounding hollow in the space between. Then, a voice rose from the Celeran side. An elder, tall and silver-haired, addressed Aaron directly. The translator spoke his words in broken human language. "You sang yesterday," the elder said. "Why did you do this?" The question filled the hall. Aaron felt every gaze upon him. His heart pounded. He stepped forward slowly, bowed his head, and spoke. "I sang because words were not enough," he said. "I wanted to show respect in the way your people speak. Not only with words, but with feeling." The elder's eyes narrowed. He looked toward the princess. She remained still, but her fingers tightened on the edge of her seat. The elder turned back to Aaron. "Songs are not given to outsiders," he said. "You touched a voice that belongs to Celera. Yet the princess did not stop you. This is strange." The council murmured in low tones. The princess raised her head. For the first time since their arrival, she spoke. Her voice was soft yet clear, like water running through stone. Aaron could not understand the words, but the translator gave their meaning. "He does not steal," she said. "He remembers. He tries. That is different." The council fell silent. The elder bowed his head to her, then leaned back in his seat. Aaron felt his breath catch. The princess had defended him. The meeting ended soon after, with no final decision made, but something unseen had shifted again. Later that day, as the humans walked through the gardens of Celera, Aaron found himself alone among the glowing trees. The air shimmered with light that drifted like mist. He heard a soft sound behind him and turned. Princess Lyra stood a few steps away, her robes catching the glow of the air. She looked at him with calm eyes, but there was no anger in them. "You sang in our tongue," she said through a small device that translated her speech. Her tone was not cold but curious. "Yes," Aaron said gently. "I studied your songs. I wanted to reach you." She watched him closely. "Why reach me? Your leaders speak to my council. That should be enough." Aaron shook his head. "Words speak to the mind. Songs speak to the heart. I think your people have been waiting too long for someone to speak to their hearts." Her gaze lowered for a moment, then lifted again. There was something soft in her eyes now, something almost fragile. "Long ago," she said, "my mother sang to me. Before the war. Before silence. I thought no one would ever sing like that again." Aaron felt the truth in her voice. He understood now why she had wept in the hall. His song had reminded her of what she had lost. "I did not mean to bring pain," Aaron said. "I only wanted to bring respect." Lyra shook her head. "It is not pain you gave me. It is memory. Memory can be heavy, but it can also be hope." They stood in silence among the glowing trees. For a moment, the distance between human and Celeran seemed to fade. Then she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "If you sing again, do not stop halfway. Continue. Only then will we know if your heart truly speaks our language." Her words struck him deeply. He bowed his head. "I will," he said. When she left, Aaron stood alone, but his heart was no longer heavy. He knew what he had to do. The song he had shaped before was only the beginning. He would learn more. He would listen closer. He would give not only voice, but his whole heart. For the first time, he felt that the bridge between their worlds was not impossible. It had begun with a melody, but it could grow into something greater. And though the path ahead was uncertain, Aaron knew he would walk it, note by note, word by word, until the silence between them was gone. That night, under the glow of Solara's twin moons, Aaron sat once more with his tablet. He listened to every fragment of Solaran music he could find. He hummed the notes softly, his voice echoing in the quiet air. His throat grew sore, but he did not stop. He remembered Lyra's words. Continue. So he did. The day of the next council gathering came quickly. The humans prepared their usual speeches and agreements, hoping that something would finally move the Solaran leaders. Aaron, however, prepared something different. He had spent long nights practicing, shaping his voice to match the tones he had studied. His throat ached, but his spirit was strong. He remembered the princess's quiet command in the garden. She had told him to continue. Those words had given him courage greater than any order from his own leaders. The grand hall of Solara was filled with light again. The council sat in their silver robes, silent and still. The human leaders spoke first, repeating promises of peace and friendship. The translators carried the words across the space, but the Solarans gave no sign of emotion. The same wall of silence hung heavy in the room. Aaron waited until the last human voice had faded. His heart pounded, and his hands shook, but he stepped forward. His own leaders turned to him in alarm, but he did not stop. He bowed before the council, his eyes resting on the princess. She did not look away this time. She held his gaze, calm and steady, as if waiting to see what he would do. Aaron drew in a deep breath and began to sing. The first note rose uncertainly, but then his voice found the rhythm he had practiced. The tones flowed up and down, carrying fragments of Solaran melody mixed with his own human sound. It was not perfect, but it was honest. He sang not only with his voice but with his heart, shaping each note with respect. The hall grew still. The translators fell silent, for they had nothing to carry. The Solarans watched with wide eyes. Their ears had not expected such a sound from a human throat. Aaron's song painted a story. It told of distance and longing, of bridges not yet built, of hope carried across stars. He sang of storms that could not break the flame of memory. He sang of voices that rose even when silence tried to bury them. Each note reached higher, then softened, like waves rising and falling on a shore. Princess Lyra's eyes widened. At first, her face was still, but slowly her lips parted. Her breath caught, and her crystal eyes glistened with light. Aaron's song had touched something deep within her, something hidden beneath years of quiet duty. Around her, the council members whispered in low tones, but she did not move. Her eyes never left Aaron. His voice shook slightly as he reached the higher notes, but he pressed on. The memory of his grandmother's gentle voice guided him, reminding him that song was not about perfection but about truth. When the last note faded into the air, silence filled the hall. It was not the same silence as before. This silence was heavy with feeling. The Solarans stared at him as if seeing him for the first time. The humans held their breath, unsure of what would follow. Then the princess rose from her seat. Her hands trembled slightly as she lifted her head. Her eyes shone with tears, but her voice was steady. She spoke in her own tongue, and though the translator gave the words, everyone already felt their meaning. "Continue," she said. Her voice broke the silence like dawn breaking the night. Aaron's chest tightened. He felt the weight of her command, but it was not harsh. It was a plea. It was the voice of someone who had waited too long for a sound that could heal. He closed his eyes and began again. His throat was dry, but he poured what strength he had left into the song. This time, his voice was softer, gentler, like a river flowing under moonlight. He sang not only for the princess but for her people, for his people, for every heart that longed to be heard. Tears rolled down Lyra's cheeks. The council watched in silence, their calm masks cracking with awe. The sound of a human voice had done what years of words could not. It had reached into the very soul of their princess and awakened her memory. When his song ended, Aaron lowered his head, unsure if he had gone too far. His body shook with exhaustion, but he stood tall. The princess slowly stepped forward, leaving her seat for the first time in the presence of humans. She stopped before him. With trembling hands, she touched her heart, then lifted her hand toward him. It was a gesture of deep meaning among her people. The council gasped. Through the translator, her words came soft but strong. Your song is not ours, yet it carries truth. You have spoken where words failed. You have reminded me of what was lost. And you have shown me that hope is not gone. The hall erupted in murmurs. Some Celerans looked uncertain, but many bowed their heads in respect. The human envoys stared in disbelief, unable to grasp the weight of what had just taken place. Aaron felt his throat tighten with emotion. He bowed deeply before the princess. I only wish to honor your people, he said softly. Lyra looked at him with eyes still wet with tears. You have done more than honor, she replied. You have given us back a piece of ourselves. The council ended in silence once more, but this silence was no longer empty. It was filled with change, fragile yet powerful. The princess returned to her seat, but her final glance at Aaron was not of distance. It was of quiet trust. That evening, as the sun of Solara dipped below the silver horizon, Aaron stood alone in the gardens once again. The air was cool, filled with the faint hum of glowing trees. He replayed the moment in his mind, the look in Lyra's eyes, the command she had given. Continue. He whispered the word to himself. It was more than a request. It was a promise. And he knew he would keep it. The stars above shone brighter than before, as if listening. And somewhere deep inside, Aaron felt that the song had only just begun. The council hall had grown quiet after Aaron's song, but the silence that followed carried more meaning than any speech. Princess Lyra had shown her tears before her people, and that alone was enough to change everything. The Celerans were proud, bound by tradition, and they believed emotions should remain hidden. Yet their princess had cried, not in shame, but in truth. As the humans left the hall, many of them whispered to Aaron. Some congratulated him, others warned him. They feared he had crossed a line that could not be mended. Aaron said nothing. His mind was not on the council or on politics. His thoughts were on the princess. He remembered the way her tears glistened in the silver light of the hall. He remembered her voice telling him to continue. Those tears had been heavy with memory. He had not brought them by force. They had been waiting to fall for many years. That night, Aaron walked again through the glowing gardens. The air smelled of soft flowers that shone faintly in the dark. He thought of his grandmother's songs, of the warmth they carried, and of how music could awaken old wounds while giving comfort. He wondered what memories the princess had seen when he sang. The next day, the humans were called to the hall once more. The council gathered, and Princess Lyra sat in her place. This time, however, her gaze was not distant. She looked directly at Aaron as the meeting began. The humans spoke their words, and the Celerans listened politely, but the true weight of the gathering rested not on the speeches but on what had already happened between Aaron and the princess. When the talks ended, Lyra rose from her seat. The council members turned toward her in surprise. She did not often speak. She looked at Aaron and said, "Walk with me." The humans shifted uncomfortably, but Aaron followed without hesitation. The princess led him out of the hall, through long corridors of silver stone, and into a quiet chamber filled with carved walls. Each carving told a story of Silura wars fought, victories won, and the songs of old. Lyra touched one of the carvings gently. It showed a mother holding a child while music swirled around them. "This is my mother," she said. Her voice was calm, but her eyes trembled with light. "She sang to me when I was young." Her voice was soft. "Her songs gave me strength. When she died, the songs ended." Aaron listened closely. He could hear the weight in her tone. "Your people still sing," he said softly. "Yes," she replied, "but not like her. The council sings for ceremony. The armies sing for war. But the songs of the heart, the songs of home, those are gone. I thought they would never return." She turned to him, her eyes shining. "Then you sang. Your words were not perfect, your notes not exact, but your heart was true." And in that moment, I heard her again. Aaron felt his chest tighten. He bowed his head. "I did not know I would bring back such memory. I only wished to honor you." Her lips curved into the smallest of smiles. "You did more than honor. You broke silence. You gave me back a voice I thought I had lost." For a moment, neither spoke. The chamber was quiet except for the faint hum of light flowing through the stone walls. Then the princess stepped closer. "My people see strength in silence," she said. "They believe tears are weakness. But when you sang, I could not hold back. I cried, and I did not care who saw." "Do you know why?" Aaron shook his head. "Because I remembered what it means to feel alive," she whispered. Her words struck him deeply. He realized then that the bridge between their worlds was not built by treaties or promises. It was built by simple truth. A song from one heart could awaken another. They walked together through the chamber, past the carvings of ancient rulers and battles. At last they came to a wall with no carvings, smooth and blank. Lyra touched it gently. "This wall waits for a new story," she said. "Perhaps the story of our people and yours. Perhaps it begins with a song." Aaron looked at her, and for the first time, he saw not only a princess but a person carrying pain and hope. He felt a bond growing, fragile but real. That evening, the princess called for a small gathering in the gardens. Not the full council, only a few trusted elders and the human envoys. She wished to hear the song again, but not in the hall of politics. She wished to hear it under the sky of Silura. The garden glowed with silver light as the group assembled. The air was filled with quiet anticipation. Aaron stood in the center, his heart racing. He looked at the princess. She nodded, her eyes soft, urging him forward. Aaron began to sing once more. His voice rose through the air, carrying tones that mingled with the hum of the glowing trees. The melody was the same as before, but something had changed. This time, the song was not for politics or council. It was for her. It was for the memory of her mother. It was for the bond between their hearts. The elders listened in silence, their faces unreadable. The humans stood still, unsure of what they were witnessing. But the princess closed her eyes. As the song filled the garden, tears slid down her cheeks once again. She did not hide them. She let them fall, shining in the silver light. When the song ended, She opened her eyes and whispered, "Continue." Her voice shook, not from weakness but from the force of memory. She had remembered her mother's songs, her childhood, her home before the weight of duty. She had remembered what it meant to feel. The elders exchanged glances. They had never seen their princess so open, so unguarded. One of them bowed his head slightly. Another folded his hands in respect. They did not call it weakness. They called it truth. Aaron stood quietly, his chest rising with heavy breath. He had given all he could, and it had reached her. He saw in her tears not sorrow alone but hope. A door had opened between their worlds, and it had been opened by a song. That night, as the stars spread across the sky, Princess Lyra walked alone through the garden. Her people had seen her tears. Her council had seen her truth. For the first time, she did not feel shame. She felt strength. And in the quiet of the night, she whispered to the wind, "Mother, your song lives again." The days that followed the garden song were unlike anything either side had expected. The humans had come with plans and papers, yet none of those seemed to matter anymore. The Celerans had always held themselves behind silence and ritual, but that wall had begun to crack. And at the center of it all was a human voice that had dared to sing. Princess Lyra spoke more often now. She no longer sat in silence during every council session. When the humans offered words of respect, she looked at them instead of looking past them. When Aaron was present, her eyes often rested on him, as if she drew strength from knowing he was there. Her people noticed, and whispers began to spread across Celera. The humans, too, whispered, unsure whether to fear or celebrate what was happening. One morning, the council gathered again. The chamber was full of tension. The Celeran elders sat upright, their silver robes gleaming, their crystal eyes sharp. The human envoys stood ready, carrying the same speeches they had spoken before. But this time, the air was different. The elder who had once questioned Aaron stood and spoke. "For many years, humans have asked for trust," he said. "For many years, we gave no answer. But now our princess has shown us something new. She has shown us that truth can come not from power or wealth, but from the heart. We cannot ignore this." The hall stirred with low voices. Aaron stood still, unsure of what might follow. Then Lyra rose. Her robe flowed like liquid light as she stepped forward. She looked not at the council but at her people gathered behind them. "For too long," she said, "we have believed that silence is strength. We thought hiding our hearts would protect us. But in silence, we lost our songs. We lost our memories. We lost our hope." Her voice grew stronger. "A human reminded me of what we once were. He sang to me in my own tongue. His song awakened memories I thought gone forever. If one voice can do this, what can many voices do together?" The council members shifted uncomfortably, but no one dared to silence her. Her words carried more power than any law. Aaron felt his chest tighten. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. She was not only defending him, she was challenging the very walls her people had built around their hearts. Lyra turned to him. Her crystal eyes shone. "Sing again," she said. The hall fell silent. Aaron hesitated for only a moment, then stepped forward. He took a deep breath and began to sing. His voice rose and fell, carrying the melody he had practiced night after night. The sound filled the chamber, echoing against the stone walls. This time, it did not carry only longing. It carried hope, steady and strong. When the last note faded, something unexpected happened. One of the younger Silaran counselors stood and added his voice. His tone was deeper, but it wove itself into the melody. Another counselor followed, then another. Soon the hall was filled with voices. Some were strong, others unsure, but all of them joined. The humans stood in awe. Aaron's song had become something larger than himself. It was no longer a bridge of one voice, it was the beginning of harmony between two peoples. Princess Lyra stepped down from her seat and joined the voices. Her tone was pure, carrying sorrow and strength, loss and hope. Aaron listened as her song rose above the others, guiding them like a beacon. His throat burned, but he continued, weaving his voice with hers. Together, they created a sound that filled the hall with life. When the song ended, no one spoke for a long time. Many Celarans sat with their heads bowed. Some had tears in their eyes. Even the oldest elders, who had lived through countless wars, seemed shaken. At last, the elder who had first doubted Aaron spoke again. His voice was heavy with respect. Perhaps we were wrong. Perhaps strength is not in silence, but in sharing. Today we have seen that walls do not protect us, they only keep us apart. If song can break those walls, then perhaps it is time we listen. The hall echoed with quiet agreement. For the first time, the humans felt the weight of the walls between them begin to crumble. That evening, the humans and Celarans gathered in the great square of the capital. News of the song had spread quickly, and people from across the city had come to hear. The air shimmered with silver light as thousands filled the square. Some carried small glowing stones that pulsed with soft rhythm, a sign of readiness to sing. Aaron stood at the center with Princess Lyra by his side. He felt the weight of every eye upon him. His hands trembled, but Lyra's presence steadied him. She looked at him and gave a small nod. He began softly, his voice rising into the night. The melody drifted across the crowd like a spark. For a moment, only his voice filled the air. Then Lyra joined him. Her voice was clear and radiant, carrying through the square with power. One by one, Silaran voices added themselves. The sound grew until it filled the night sky. The humans, uncertain at first, slowly began to hum, then sing. Their voices were different, rougher, but they blended. The song became larger than language. It was not Silaran. It was not human. It was something new, born from both. The people wept openly. Old men and women remembered songs of childhood. Children clung to their parents, eyes wide with wonder. Soldiers who had known only battle sang with trembling voices. The city itself seemed to glow brighter with every note. When the final chord faded into the night, silence returned once more. But this silence was no longer empty. It was full of unity. Two peoples who had once stood apart now stood together, their voices woven into one. Princess Lyra raised her hand. From this day, she declared, let no wall stand between us. If a song can unite us, then let us build a future with open hearts, not closed silence. The crowd erupted with cheers. Silaran and human voices lifted together, not in song this time, but in joy. Aaron stood beside her, his chest heavy with emotion. He had not set out to change a world. He had only wanted to reach one heart. Yet that single choice had broken walls that had stood for centuries. He looked at Lyra. She looked back, and in her eyes was not only gratitude but trust. The bond between them was no longer a fragile spark. It was a flame strong enough to light the path ahead. The night after the great singing in the square, the city of Silara did not sleep. Every street glowed with light as people talked, sang, and celebrated. For the first time in many generations, Celerans shared songs openly. Humans walked among them, not as strangers but as guests welcomed into the heart of a people who had once closed themselves to the galaxy. Aaron sat quietly in the garden where he had first sung to Princess Lyra. The stars stretched overhead, clear and endless. He touched the petals of a glowing flower and thought of the path that had led him here. He had come as an envoy, unsure if he would even be allowed to speak. Yet somehow, his voice had broken through silence and reached not only one heart but thousands. Footsteps stirred the grass. Lyra entered the garden, her robe trailing silver light behind her. She carried no crown tonight, only a simple band across her hair. Her eyes found him quickly, and she sat beside him. "You are quiet," she said softly. Aaron nodded. "I never imagined this. I thought maybe they would listen for a moment, then turn away. But they listened. They sang. It feels unreal." Lyra's gaze turned upward. "It is not unreal. It is the truth our people needed but were too afraid to face. We forgot how to feel. You reminded us. That is something no envoy or warrior has ever done." Her words carried both gratitude and weight. Aaron felt his chest tighten. "What happens now?" Lyra took a deep breath. "Now, the hardest part begins. A song can open hearts, but it cannot write laws, share resources, or heal wounds from old wars. My people and yours must build something lasting. That will take more than voices. It will take trust." Aaron looked at her. "Do you think they are ready?" She held his gaze for a long moment. "They are not ready. But they are willing. That is more than I hoped for." The next day, the council hall filled again. This time it was not only the elders and human envoys. Citizens were allowed to stand in the galleries above. The chamber hummed with energy as voices whispered about what had happened in the square. An elder rose. His voice carried far. "The Celerans have stood apart for too long. We believed silence was strength. But now we see that silence has left us weak. The song we shared has shown us the truth. Our future cannot be found in walls. It must be found in bridges. We propose a pact of unity with humanity. Together we will stand as allies." Gasps and murmurs filled the hall. For a people once known for suspicion, the words sounded daring. The human envoys stepped forward, their faces bright with hope. Aaron stood behind them, his heart pounding. Princess Lyra rose as well. "This pact is not only about trade or defense," she said. "It is about remembering who we are. We Celerans once sang to the stars, and humans have brought back that memory. If we join hands now, we can face the future as more than allies. We can face it as friends." The council voted. The decision was not without struggle, but when the last voice was counted, the pact was sealed. Celera and Earth would stand together. When the news spread, the square filled again. Bells rang across the city, and glowing lights lit every tower. For the first time in living memory, Celera celebrated with joy, not only in private homes but in the open air. Songs rose into the night sky, weaving human and Celeran melodies into one. Aaron walked beside Lyra through the crowds. Everywhere they went, people bowed or reached out to touch them. Aaron felt overwhelmed, but Lyra smiled. "They do not see us as rulers or envoys anymore," she whispered. "They see us as symbols of what is possible." That night, a new event was planned. A joint choir of humans and Celerans would sing together before the whole city. It would not be in the ancient Celeran tongue alone, nor in Earth's languages alone. It would be a blend, a song written in both. Aaron stood with the singers on the great platform built in the center of the square. The crowd stretched as far as his eyes could see. Torches and glowing stones lit the night, making the city shine like a sea of stars. Lyra stepped beside him, her presence calm and steady. When the music began, Aaron's voice joined with hers once more. The song spoke of sorrow and loss, of walls that once divided, but it rose into verses of hope and unity. Each note carried not only memory but promise. The Cellarans sang with deep, resonant tones. The humans added warmth and rhythm. Together, their voices created a harmony no single people could have made alone. The sound shook the air. The ground itself seemed to hum with their unity. Children clapped their glowing stones in rhythm. Elders wept openly. Soldiers laid down their weapons to listen. And above the city, the stars seemed to shine brighter. When the final note faded, silence filled the square. Then the silence broke into cheers, louder than any Aaron had ever heard. The voices of thousands rose in triumph, echoing across the towers and hills. Lyra turned to him, her eyes bright with tears. "Do you see what you have done?" she whispered. Aaron shook his head. "Not me. All of us. I only began. The rest was their choice." She smiled. "And yet without you, none of this would have begun. That is something I will never forget." The celebrations lasted long into the night. Food was shared, music played, and people danced in the streets. Humans and Cellarans stood side by side, laughing and speaking as if they had always been friends. But when the music slowed and the fires dimmed, Aaron found himself again in the garden with Lyra. They sat in silence, watching the stars. "You gave me back my voice," Lyra said softly. "And now my people sing again. What else lies ahead, I cannot say. But I know this. Wherever the path leads, we must walk it together." Aaron looked at her. The trust in her eyes was clear. And in that moment, he understood that their journey was not only about two peoples joining hands. It was also about two souls who had found each other across the silence of worlds. For a time, the city of Solaris seemed to glow with endless joy. Songs filled the air, and humans walked the streets with ease. Markets buzzed with new trade, and children of both worlds played together, singing melodies that mixed their languages into one playful rhythm. The pact between Earth and Solara had been signed, and the first days of unity felt like a dream. But peace is never without its tests. One evening, dark shapes appeared in the skies above Solara. At first, many thought they were human ships carrying more envoys, but the truth soon became clear. They were vessels of another race, a people known as the Draylen. For years, the Draylen had tried to force Solara into submission, demanding resources and tribute. They had failed to break the Solaran silence, but now, hearing of the alliance, they came again with anger. The ships hovered in the sky like great shadows. A message thundered across the city. "Solara belongs to no one but us. End your pact with humans, or face fire from the heavens." Fear swept through the streets. Many Celarans trembled, their old walls of silence rising again in their hearts. The humans prepared defenses, but they knew they were few against the massive Draylen fleet. In the council hall, voices clashed. Some Celarans argued to surrender. Others called to fight, even if it meant destruction. The humans stood firm, insisting they would not abandon their allies. Yet the chamber filled with doubt, and old fears threatened to undo everything the song had built. Through it all, Princess Lyra sat in silence. She remembered the fear in her people's eyes when the Draylen had attacked long ago. She remembered how silence had been their only shield. But now she looked at Aaron and knew silence was no longer enough. She rose and spoke. The Draylen believe fear will divide us. They believe silence will return to rule us. But we have a new strength now. We have voices joined as one. If they come with fire, we will answer not only with ships, not only with weapons, but with the strength of unity they cannot understand. Her words gave courage, yet many still trembled. Aaron stepped forward. They want to see if our bond is weak. Let us show them it is stronger than anything they can bring. If we sing together once more, not just to each other but to the stars, they will know we cannot be broken. It was a daring plan. No one had ever faced an enemy with song. But in the hearts of the people, a spark of courage began to burn. The next day, as the Draylen ships gathered above, the people of Solera and the humans filled the great square once more. The council, the soldiers, the citizens, even the children all stood together. Torches lit the night, glowing stones pulsed in every hand. At the center stood Princess Lyra and Aaron. The Draylen voice boomed again from the sky. Bow, or burn. Instead of answering with words, Lyra raised her hand. Silence fell across the square. Then she began to sing. Her voice rose clear and pure, carrying sorrow, courage, and hope. Aaron joined her, his voice steady and strong, weaving into hers. The humans around them lifted their voices next, rough but powerful. Then the Celerans added their deep tones, filling the air with harmony. The song grew until it reached the skies. It was not only music. It was a declaration. A promise. A shield made of unity. The Draylen listened. They had expected fear. They had expected surrender. Instead, they heard voices strong enough to shake the stars. The sound carried through their ships, through their hearts, and for the first time, they felt something they had never felt from Solera before: defiance, not in silence, but in song. The people of Solera raised their glowing stones high. Children sang without trembling. Elders sang with tears running down their faces. Soldiers sang with fists lifted. Humanity and Solera stood as one, their voices echoing across the night sky. Aaron and Lyra sang louder, their voices guiding the rest. In that moment, it no longer mattered who had begun the song. It belonged to everyone. It was the soul of two worlds refusing to bow. The Draylen ships hovered, their weapons ready. But they did not fire. Their commanders hesitated, unsettled by what they saw and heard. This was not a people broken by fear. This was a people reborn in unity. To attack them now would mean endless resistance, not silence. Minutes stretched like hours. Then, slowly, the Draylen ships turned. One by one, they pulled back into the sky, their shadows fading into the stars. The square erupted in cheers. Voices of joy rose even higher than the song had. Strangers embraced. Soldiers dropped their weapons and lifted children onto their shoulders. Humans and Celerans wept together, not from fear but from victory. Lyra stood at the center, her chest rising and falling with the effort of the song. She turned to Aaron, tears shining in her eyes. They tried to break us, but our voices carried us through. Aaron smiled, his throat raw but his heart full. This is only the beginning. If we can stand together against this, there is nothing we cannot face. In the days that followed, the pact between Earth and Solera grew stronger. More ships came, not with weapons but with gifts. Trade began, knowledge was shared, and both peoples learned from each other. The memory of the Draylen threat remained, but it no longer held power. The people had seen what unity could do. Children now learned songs in both tongues. Soldiers trained side by side. Farmers shared seeds across worlds. The bond was no longer fragile. It was woven deep into every part of their lives. And in quiet moments, Aaron and Lyra still returned to the garden where it all began. They sat beneath the stars, sometimes silent, sometimes singing softly. Their voices carried not only to each other but to the future. The Celerans had once believed silence was strength. Humanity had once believed strength came only through power. Together, they had learned the truth. Strength came from voices joined, from hearts willing to reach across the unknown. And as long as their song continued, no shadow in the galaxy could silence them again.